listen to this carefully, because it contains everything you're about to hear. When someone pretends not to care about you, they're not protecting their heart. They're protecting their self-image. And when that image starts to crumble, the collapse is silent, invisible, but devastating. Carl Jung wrote that no one can truly meet another person without first meeting their own shadow. And this is exactly the situation someone finds themselves in when they fake indifference while crumbling inside. If you're going through this right now, know that what you're experiencing isn't random, and what you're about to hear can transform the way you understand yourself and your relationships. I've gathered all of this into a book called The Art of Detachment, a tool for reclaiming your strength when a connection feels like it's consuming you. If it resonates with you, the link is in the description, ready to take you beyond this video. But let's get back to the core of what's happening. This video isn't here to comfort you by saying he's suffering. It's here to show you the precise psychological mechanism that activates when the mask of indifference begins to crack, and why this process is irreversible once it starts. If you stay until the end, you'll discover not only what's happening inside him, but more importantly, what you need to do so you don't lose yourself in this process. Because here's the truth. Many women see a man's internal collapse and think they need to save him. And that's where the trouble begins. If this topic strikes a chord with you, subscribe to this channel, because once you understand these mechanisms, the way you love will change forever. Let's start from the beginning, from the foundation of this psychological phenomenon that's far more common than you might imagine. When a man fakes indifference toward you, he's not telling the truth, but he's not completely lying either. He's living in a contradiction so deep that his mind has had to create a double reality just to survive this internal conflict. On one side is what he feels, on the other is what he shows the world. And maintaining this split requires enormous psychological energy, an invisible effort that consumes the soul from within. Jung spoke of this as the battle between the conscious self and the shadow, that part of us that contains everything we don't want to admit even to ourselves. In the case of a man faking in no. split isn't a conscious, rational choice. It's a defense mechanism that activates when something threatens the self-image he's built over time. Maybe he was hurt before and decided he'd never be vulnerable to anyone again. Maybe his family taught him that feelings are weakness, that loving means losing control. Maybe he watched other men suffer for love and swore it wouldn't happen to him, that he would stay invincible. Whatever the origin of this primal wound, the result is the same: a person who can't afford to show what he feels, because that would mean losing control, losing social standing, losing face in front of the world. When you enter his life and slowly start to matter to him, something he didn't anticipate happens, something that disarms him. Your gestures touch him deeply. Your presence calms him when everything around him feels chaotic. Your smile disarms him, even when he's trying to keep his walls up. And all of this directly conflicts with his primary need to maintain the mask, to stay impervious to emotion. So the invisible game begins. He moves closer, then pulls back. He shows you genuine attention, then disappears completely. He says sweet, affectionate things, then denies ever saying them, as if they never happened. It's not conscious cruelty, it's pure panic. It's the panic of someone who feels that his invisible fortress is about to crumble under the weight of your importance in his life. And the fortress doesn't collapse because you're attacking it directly. It collapses because you simply exist. Because your dignity, your consistency, your non-negotiable presence forces him to look at himself without the cushion of his carefully constructed indifference. This is the first stage of the internal collapse, and it's not yet visible from the outside. There are no tears shed, no dramatic confessions made. There's only a growing restlessness, a slippery feeling of losing control that he doesn't know how to name or explain to himself. His body reacts before his conscious mind does. He sleeps poorly. His thoughts are crowded. He thinks about you when he shouldn't. He finds himself making increasingly creative excuses just to see you and be in your presence. And all of this while his rational mind is constantly telling him he shouldn't care, that he should stay indifferent like before, that vulnerability is dangerous and could destroy him. Here's something crucial happens that many women don't see because it's subtle and silent. He starts testing your boundaries, even though he's not doing it consciously or intentionally. He never verbalizes it, but his nervous system needs to verify in silence whether you're real, whether you'll stay when things get difficult, whether you can be the safe container for what he's starting to feel. So he strategically ignores you to see if you chase him like you used to. He provokes you emotionally to see how you react. He pushes you away to observe whether you come back to him. It's not a cruel, conscious game. It's a deeply unconscious safety test. It's his system wordlessly asking, are you strong enough to stay with me if I stop pretending? Can you love the vulnerable version of me? Or do you only love the image I've built? And if you don't understand this fundamental point, you can misread his every move. You might think he doesn't care when, in reality, he's dying of fear that he cares too much. You might think he's cold and detached when in reality he's trembling inside with terror. You might think he's playing games consciously when in reality he's desperately trying to figure out if it's safe to stop playing, if he can finally lay down his weapons. While this is happening in the depths of his psyche, his conscious mind continues building the public narrative of indifference. He talks about other women and their appeal. He minimizes what's between you. He says he's not the type who falls in love easily, that the relationship isn't serious, that he doesn't have time for this sort of thing. And every time he says these things to stay consistent with the mask, a part of him dies a little, because he knows he's lying deep down. He knows he's betraying his true self. He knows the mask is becoming harder and more exhausting to maintain day after day. Jung would say that at this moment, the shadow is becoming more and more powerful, more and more insistent, more and more difficult to ignore and repress. Because the shadow can't be repressed indefinitely without emotional and psychological consequences. Sooner or later, it emerges into reality. And when it emerges, the collapse is inevitable and irreversible. This collapse doesn't arrive as a sudden, dramatic explosion. It arrives as a slow erosion, as a gradual loss of cohesion. He becomes more irritable with himself and others, more anxious without apparent reason, more contradictory in his behaviors and messages. One day he's affectionate and present. The next day he's distant and absent. One week he tells you you're important. The next week he acts like you don't even exist. And all of this because the internal battle is becoming psychologically unsustainable. His conscious mind is losing the battle against the emerging shadow, and he feels it intensely. He feels he's losing control over the situation. He feels the mask is about to fall completely. And this terrifies him deeply because he doesn't know who he is without the mask. He hasn't explored his true nature without protections. He doesn't know how to love without defensive constructs. He doesn't know how to be vulnerable without feeling totally annihilated and destroyed. This is where many women make the biggest mistake in this dynamic. They see the internal collapse and misinterpret what should be done. They instinctively think they need to save him, like a heroine rescuing the tormented hero. They think if they're loving enough, patient enough, understanding enough, he'll find the courage to finally take off the mask. So they unconsciously begin to compromise their boundaries. They start chasing when they should stand still. They start explaining what should be obvious. They start reassuring when they should be observing. And when they do this, they give him exactly what his nervous system was unconsciously seeking: a convenient reason not to change the situation, a reason to keep pretending like always. Because if you're willing to stay with him while he pretends, why should he find the courage to stop pretending? If you're willing to chase while he retreats, why should he move toward you? If you're willing to constantly reassure while he denies his feelings, why should he admit the truth? I think this is the critical point where everything changes definitively. Your compassion, however authentic and genuine the source, can become the fuel that maintains his denial over time. And this isn't true, healthy love. It's emotional codependency. It's your unconscious need to save him disguised as deep love for him. And he feels it even if he doesn't say it explicitly. He feels it in the depths of his psyche. He feels that you're not there for him as a real person. You're there for the version of him you hope to create and transform. He feels that you don't love him for what he really is. You love him for what he could become with your help. And this wounds him even more at a deep level, because it means that even you, like everyone else he's known, don't truly love him for who he is. You only love him if he changes according to your desires. You only love him if he stops pretending as you believe he should. You only love him if he becomes what you want him to be, not what he naturally is. And so the collapse continues inevitably. He retreats even further into his defenses. The mask becomes even thicker and more impenetrable. The indifference becomes even more pronounced and visible, because now he has an even stronger reason to pretend he feels nothing. He's not only protecting himself from pain and vulnerability, he's protecting you from the deep disappointment of discovering who he really is beneath the masks. He's protecting the bond from the reality that could completely destroy it. He's protecting both of you from the difficult truth that maybe you're not compatible at a deep level. Maybe you can't truly love each other. Maybe this story was never meant to work in a healthy way. But here's something truly important happens that few people understand. If you don't give in to his psychological needs, if you remain firm in your dignity without compromise, if you don't chase, don't reassure, don't constantly explain, if you simply stand there, present in your consistency, aware, non-negotiable in your boundaries, then his nervous system receives a completely different message from the one it was seeking. It receives the devastating message that you can't save him from himself, that you can't change him the way you'd like, that you can't convince him with your love to stop pretending, that the only thing you can do is remain yourself without compromise. And this message is deeply unsettling for someone who's faking indifference, because it means the mask doesn't work anymore like it did before. It means he can no longer control and manipulate you through detachment. It means he has to face himself without the cushion of your constant pursuit. And when this happens, the internal collapse accelerates significantly. Not because you caused it consciously, but because you stopped delaying it and allowing him to procrastinate. His conscious mind can no longer count on you to maintain the comfortable denial. He has to face the shadow, that dark part of himself, alone and without help. And this is terrifying and disorienting, because facing the shadow means admitting the vulnerability he's avoided. It means acknowledging the need he's denied. It means accepting that he's not invulnerable as he's pretended. It means becoming human and fallible. And many men don't know how to truly do this. Many men have spent their entire lives building a mental and emotional fortress, and they don't know how to demolish it without collapsing inside it. They don't know how to be fragile in the right way. They don't know how to ask for help when they need it. They don't know how to love without defensive constructs that protect them from everything. So what happens is this: an important fork in the road. Either he finds the courage within himself to remove the mask, face himself, and learn to love from vulnerability and authenticity. Or he retreats completely, rejecting the situation. He runs from his feelings by building new defenses. He disappears from your life to start over elsewhere. He builds an even thicker, more impenetrable mask. He finds another woman who will chase him, who will reassure him, who will allow him to keep faking indifference. Because here's the truth: you can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved deep down. You can't love someone who deep inside doesn't want to be truly loved. You can't force someone to stop pretending if pretending is the only thing they know how to do to survive. But here's the most important thing to understand. This is not a failure on your part. This doesn't mean you weren't enough, that you didn't love enough in the right way. It doesn't mean you did something fundamentally wrong in the relationship. It simply means you met someone who wasn't ready inside, someone who was still too afraid of their own feelings, someone who still had too much to learn about themselves and their emotional nature. And the fact that you stayed true to yourself, that you didn't compromise, that you didn't try to save him at all costs, it means you did the right thing. And you taught an important lesson, even if he won't learn it immediately or easily. You showed what someone looks like who doesn't negotiate their worth for love. You showed what someone looks like who loves from strength, not from weakness and insecurity. You showed what someone looks like who's willing to lose rather than betray themselves in an attempt to hold on to someone. And this remains in his unconscious. Even if he physically leaves, Even if he builds a new, even thicker mask, even if he fakes indifference with the next woman he meets. He knows at a deep level what he doesn't want to admit. A part of him knows you were right in your dignity. He knows it could have been completely different if he'd found the courage. He knows he could have removed the mask with you. He knows he could have truly loved from an authentic place. And this knowing will follow him through time. Not as acute remorse that consumes him, but as an unrealized possibility that returns. As the visceral awareness that there was another road, a different path, and that he didn't have the courage to take it. I want you to understand something profound here that changes everything. When someone fakes indifference, they're not protecting you from suffering. They're protecting themselves. And when the internal collapse inevitably arrives, it's not your fault. It's not because you weren't pretty enough, understanding enough, loving enough. It's because he built a psychological structure that couldn't sustain itself indefinitely over time. It's because the reality of your authentic presence was too powerful for his denial. It's because the shadow was too strong for the mask he wore. And when this happens, the only thing you can do is stay true to yourself without compromise. You can't save him from his own journey of awareness. You can't change him according to your vision. You can't convince him with your love if he doesn't want to be convinced. You can only love yourself enough not to betray yourself in an attempt to save someone who isn't asking to be saved. Jung said the most important task in life is to become truly yourself, not to become what others want you to be for their convenience, not to become what you think others want from you. To become truly, authentically, courageously yourself in the world. And when you do this, when you embody this truth in your being, you attract people who are ready for this level of authenticity and truth. And you repel people who aren't and can't be. Not because you're harsh and cold, not because you're frigid and reject love, but because your integrity leaves no room for well-constructed pretenses. Your dignity doesn't negotiate with the masks others wear. Your presence doesn't allow lies to sit comfortably in the space between you. This is the real power you possess without knowing it. And it's not the power to change someone from the outside. It's the power to not let someone change you from the inside. It's not the power to save someone from themselves. It's the power to save yourself from toxic dynamics. It's not the power to convince someone to love. It's the power to love yourself so deeply that you don't need to convince anyone. Because when you love yourself like this, others see it clearly. They feel it in your energy. And they either rise to meet your level or they naturally retreat. There's no external conflict. There's no prolonged drama and suffering. There's only a natural selection based on the integrity of both people. I want you to remember this when you see someone faking indifference toward you. It's not a light passing game. It's a well-constructed emotional prison. It's a prison he created for himself and doesn't know how to abandon or demolish. And your compassion, however noble and deep it may be, can't free him. Only he can do that through his inner work. Only he can decide the mask isn't worth the psychological price. Only he can decide that vulnerability is stronger than protection. Only he can decide to truly face the shadow, integrate it into his psyche, and finally become whole. And if he doesn't, if he keeps faking indifference, if he keeps building thicker and thicker masks over time, then know that it's not a reflection of you. It's not because you weren't enough for him. It's not because you didn't love enough in the right way. It's because he wasn't ready inside. And sometimes people aren't ready for the growth your boundaries require. Sometimes people choose the safety of denial over the risk of truth. Sometimes people prefer to pretend forever rather than face themselves for a moment. But you don't have to make the same choice. You can choose differently and more consciously. You can choose to be real. You can choose to be vulnerable without losing your dignity. You can choose to love without betraying yourself in the small daily gestures. You can choose to stay true to yourself even when it means losing someone you love. And when you make this choice consciously, when you embody this truth in your daily being, your way of loving changes forever. You no longer love from fear. You no longer love from the need to feel okay. You no longer love from the hope of completely changing someone. You love from inner strength. You love from conscious choice. You love from the deep awareness that you're whole even without the other person. That you don't need to complete yourself through another person. That your wholeness comes from within. And this is the love that lasts over time. Not because the other person never leaves, but because even if they leave, you remain. You remain true to yourself. You remain intact in your identity. You remain whole in your being. And from this place of integrity, you can only meet people who are ready for this level of authenticity. People who don't need to pretend to be with you. People who don't need masks to feel important to you. People who are willing to be vulnerable because they know vulnerability is where true love happens. If this message has touched you deeply and resonates with who you are, give it a like and subscribe. Because when you understand these psychological mechanisms in their entirety, your way of loving will change forever. You'll no longer love from fear and need. You'll love from strength. And that changes everything in your life and your bonds. Write in the comments which part of this video touched you most, because when we share from truth, YouTube favors what we choose together. And this type of reflection only reaches those who are ready to hear it deeply. Don't forget this when you close the video. Your dignity isn't a barrier that pushes people away. It's a lighthouse that illuminates. It doesn't drive love away. It guides it toward those who are ready. And whoever comes to you from now on will come knowing they can't take you for granted. But they can find you through a conscious and authentic choice. This is the fundamental difference between a bond that consumes and drains and one that sustains and nourishes. Today, you're not leaving with manipulative techniques. You're leaving with a truth embodied in your being. You don't have to prove your worth to anyone. Your simple, aligned, and steady presence already says everything that needs to be said.